Good day. My name is Stephen Kumalai. I am here to present an overview of the brite Paint Company tax forms 941, the W-2, and the W-3. The 941 is a form that business owners use to report the federal income tax that the employees paid, otherwise known as FIT, but also the Social Security tax, which is known as OASDI, and also the Medicare, which is also then known as HI. This form is due on the last day of the first month after the quarter. This quarter that we are recording on is actually October, November, and December. As you see here, the form, which is used for all employees, is then provided for 10 employees that works in 2023 for the brite Paint Company. And this is because it's quarterly. So for the quarter, the wages they earned was almost $200,000. The tax that was charged for the quarter is $28,129. The Social Security tax, which was charged upon the wages of $201,010.06, multiplied by 0.124 equals $24,925.25. The taxable Medicare wages was $205,548.47. You multiply that by 0.029 and you come out to $5,980.91. I think it's a good time to see actually why, or explain why, the wages, the Social Security wages and the Medicare wages were different. For number two, the wages, it was then at $199,000 because there is a few employees who are contributing to a required fund that is not taxable. If you look at then the Medicare, that was actually the Medicare amount there of $205,548.47 is actually the total earnings earned during the quarter. So if you subtract $6,250 from that, which is the contributions by the employees, that would then equal $199,298.47. Now for the difference in the Social Security wages is because there was an employee who made more than the limit for the Social Security Administration's tax. We will talk more about that when we cover his W-2. When you look at it, then you say to yourself, it says then down to total line 5E, they ask you then to add up the OSDI and the HI, which comes out to $30,886.16. The form continues on line 6. It says add line 3, 5E, and 5F. Well, then 5F on the form, there's nothing to add. So we add lines 3 and S5E, comes out to $59,016.16. I want to just point out specifically to pay attention to the 16 cents because that's going to come into play in our next slide. Now on the form for 941, they ask you the instructions to go to line 6, get a total there, and then it goes down to line 16. Here on the next slide of line 16, they ask you are to figure out what type of payer are you. brite was a depositor and was a monthly depositor. So as you see here, there's 3 deposits, November 16, December 15, and January 15, to equal a total of $59,015.24. These totals, the $6,311, for example, and 3 cents, comes out of your journal, where you have on that day, you still see an entry on November 16 of debits to your FICA FIT, and then a credit to cash of the same equivalent to pay for the tax. That's the same thing you should be able to see in your journal for also December 15th and January 15th. Now, as I said earlier, we should pay attention to the 16 cents because here I have a total of $59.15.24. I must say, as I do this presentation, It was a difficult time actually coming to that total. I could not just use the payroll register. I had to end up actually then calculating it myself using the total earnings of 205,000 and so on to then actually buy the percentages to actually get to that amount. But then you notice when I had to do it manually, that means there probably is a discrepancy somewhere. On Form 941, they actually allow you on line 7 for such discrepancies. And on that discrepancy, the title is, it talks about a fractional. So it's asking if they're out by a few cents here and there. So what you need to do on line 7 is to add 8 cents. So the 8 cents actually brings it up to $59,015.24. Because line 6 and line 10 need to actually be matched. And here they are matched now because you've added the 8 cents. Now after that, from line 10 down to line 12, there's nothing involved. So you just move down. Line 12 acts the total amount of tax is then $59,015.24. You go to line 13. Line 13 asks you how much tax have you paid so far this quarter. And you state then, which actually then goes also on 13G, that is $59,015.24. When you go down to line 14 then asks you, there's a question, what is the balance? Is there a difference between the amount on line 12 and the amount on line 13G? And as you can see, there isn't. So the answer is 0, which then leads you down to question number 15 on that line, then asks you, was there an overpayment? And there was 0. So then what it is a reflection is the employer has done a good job or has done the legal job of actually then paying the correct amount of tax and at the right time. So now that they've done their legal side, it is then up to them to assist the employee to then properly do their legal side in paying their taxes. This is what comes involved of the brite W-2 wage and tax statement. The W-2s actually provide the information necessary for the employee to fulfill their tax forms for the federal and for the state level. These forms actually are a reflection of all what they earned the previous year, plus shows all the withholdings. For example, out of your FICAs, your 2 FICAs, and then also it'll tell you what then is then on your FIT also. We were required to do 10 W-2s, but since this is just an overview, I'm going to touch on 3 of them. The first one here is Thomas Sokowski. It shows here all the information that is on the W-2. This is wages, it's federal taxes, Social Security, what he charged for that, the Medicare wages, what's charged for that. What I also like to point out then is that brite Paint Company is based in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, but also actually in Pennsylvania, which Pennsylvania is one of the few states that actually requires the employees to contribute to the unemployment benefits. As you see here on number 14, it says PA, Pennsylvania. They also include then state unemployment insurance, which every employee you will see then on the W-2 has then contributed to that. Also on this section is also, you could also add in the union dues. There were 2 employees that actually contribute to the union, and that would actually show on this line also. Then you go on to line 16, 17, 18, and 19, which calls about state wages, state tax, local wages, your SIT and your CITs. We can move on then to James Ferguson. James Ferguson, his wages he earned for the year was $35,125. All the information is, not the information, but all the sections or the boxes to fill out are the same. He had his federal tax, Social Security, and Medicare, and so on, and you go through it. You also see that he then contributed to then also the SUI, which is the state unemployment insurance. But there is a difference. If you look at his wages are different than his Social Security wages and also than his Medicare. Why is that? If you look on line 12A, you see that he contributed $1,500. That contribution to a simple retirement contribution then is tax deductible or not taxable. So then you need to take that away from his total earnings, which just shows up on the Medicare wages of $36,625. You subtract $1,500 from that, and that's when you get the wages in $35,125. You also then signify on line 13A that he has a retirement plan, and he goes on to the same as then was shown in the previous one of Thomas's, that it goes on to talk about state, local, tax, and then wages also. Lastly, we come to a gentleman who is his paycheck, I guess people who make too much money but bless his heart. He was interesting that I had a difficult time reporting his things. It was a challenge, but I learned from it. And you go look at James O'Neill. We will see some of the evidence of what you had to then contemplate or calculate for him. His wages was $161,336.41. Federal tax, and it goes on to his Social Security wages of $160,200. Names out how much tax he gave for the OSDI. Then he goes on to talk about his Medicare wages, which is $164,738.41. I would like to state at this moment that that is what he total earned for the year. With that in mind, then, just as we did with the previous W-2, you see here he also contributed to a retirement. How much did he contribute? $3,400. So you need to take that away from his total earnings, which was $164,738.41. Subtract that, that's how you get your wages of $161,338.41. The other question that comes to mind is you look at his Social Security wages, $160,200. Social Security has a phase out or a limit or a maximum amount of income that they can tax. Anything above that is not taxable, only just for Social Security. So so that's when you have to put in, that limit is $160,200. And the limit then that he can be taxed is $9,932.40. That is then shown here. So that's why you have his figures in that manner. And that then, for the $400,000 above it, if you subtract his total earnings from the $160,000, they're not taxable by Social Security. They're still taxable by FIT. They're still taxable by Medicare. That's why you still include them. You go on through. He contributed to his PA, SUI, as a good employee and a good Pennsylvanian. And he goes on then through your social wages, goes on then to then state, and also his local wages and his local taxes, his CIT. So now we have then the employer has done their part, the employee has done their part, but yet the IRS is still not satisfied with this. We go on to then look at another form that they request is then the brite W-3 form, a transmittal of wages and tax statements. This is then has to be, the due date is by the end of January 31. It needs to be handed in, and he then shows another verification of all the numbers that has been put together from the 941 and even the W-2s. Here it is then all tabulated into one. So all you have to do is either you can do it manually, then go through all the W-2s, which in this sense, it almost had to, because I was a little confused and a little challenging that we have then the employees, there were 12 W-2 forms or 12 employees used to fill out this W-3. Those employees then were the 10 that we did. There was one that was done for us, was the employee Williams, and then the unfortunate one was the employee Russell, who died in a car accident. You had to then include her tax liabilities and tax issues. But when you look at it, the W-3 is it resembles the W-2. It provides all the same boxes, but all the information then comes from your payroll, your payroll receipt, if you needed your employee's earnings, and then you calculate all this thing together to then provide then this information of the W-3. So here you are, the three forms that are required for this payroll project. You have your 941, your W-2, and your W-3. So this is the conclusion of this presentation. I wish you all a happy holidays and a mele kaliki maka.